a goat with a tough life dreams of becoming a professional rollerball player, the most exciting sport in the universe, but he'll have to deal with those who don't believe in him and enormous rivals. Even so, Will is determined to revolutionize the sport and prove once and for all that little goats can play. All this and more in Goat the Movie. This story begins in a city called Hiverpolis, where we meet a little goat named Will Harris and his mother, Louise Harris. Will, a huge fan of the sport known as rollerball, is thrilled that his mother has taken him to see the new poster of Jet Fillmore, the player he admires. However, right at that moment, his mother gives him a big surprise. Not only did they go to see the poster as usual, but this time she bought him tickets to take him to his first live game. So, when he sees that the tickets are real, he is very excited. So, Will is very grateful to his mother, and together they go to enjoy the rollerball game, where they introduce the Tornadoes team, the team that Jet Fillmore, the most outstanding player of the season, plays for, who makes her grand entrance in front of the public. At the same time, Louise cheers him on, since she's a Tornadoes fan, and asks Will if he isn't excited, as he was stunned. But he, seeing Jet live, tells his mother that one day he'd like to be like her. 10 years pass. We see Will constantly training, still dreaming of becoming a true rollerball player. For now, he lives in a rented garage, where the local kids admire him as a player. However, he has a small problem. He's going through a rough patch, and the owner of the place, named Frank, tells him he needs to get his act together, while Will always tries to avoid him. Next, Will goes to his job at a restaurant, where he's currently a delivery driver. There, they see a news report about how veteran actress Jet Fillmore is being compared to the new generation, represented by a horse named Maine, leading fans to wonder who will be the best. However, Jet is at a disadvantage, as the Tornadoes are going through a rough patch, and naturally, business in Ivy City is suffering. Meanwhile, Will remains motivated and believes that one day a team will recruit him. Will spends some time on his delivery job, watching the Tornadoes scoreboards drop points, so he decides to skip the game. He also has to adjust to city life, having to live with larger animals, which isn't easy for a goat. Later, Will makes a delivery with his friends Hannah and Daryl, who tell him that the Tornadoes are still playing against Team Magma, where Maine is on the team, but the odds are against Jet. Just then, they see Maine score a touchdown, going over the top of the Tornado. So, Will tells them he'll take advantage of the time to go practice at the neighborhood court, since everyone will be there after the game and won't let him practice. Will does a few moves, and it seems he's actually quite good, as he cheers himself on, and keeps shooting basket after basket. Just as he's about to throw a truly epic ball, Grizz, the self-proclaimed leader of the field, appears and blocks it. He's informed that short animals never make rollerball team, so he's sent home. At the same time, Jet also leaves the court after losing the match. A fan asks her for an autograph, which she happily gives, until he and others question her about why she hasn't won the Claw Trophy, at which point Jet heads off to the cameo. Then he goes to see the team owner, Flo, who is very relaxed, and doesn't want to put pressure on herself. After the bad game, Jet asks her to do something to improve the team, since the current players aren't up to par and they also have an open roster spot, so he demands that she fix it no matter what. Back with Will, he arrives home and tries to go inside quietly so as not to wake the others, but Frank constantly reminds him that he's behind on payment. Will asks for a little more time, as he's going through a rough patch. Frank tells him he understands, but that he also has his own problems, and many mouths to feed. Will realizes he really does have a very large family that depends on him, so he promises that, when he becomes a great athlete and famous, he will pay for everything and much more to support him. However, Frank replies that dreams don't pay the rent, and asks him to get a stable job for everyone's sake, since goats don't play rollerball, and there's no future in that. He politely gives him 24 hours to catch up on the rent, or he'll have to evict him, and rent the garage to someone else. That night Will can't sleep thinking about the problem, but when he sees Jet's poster, he knows he shouldn't give up. He decides to sell his best sneakers, which are a special edition. So, along with a couple of friends, he arrives with a shrewd businessman. He shows him the excellent pair of sneakers and praises them profusely to get what he needs. The businessman, as cunning as ever, assesses the quality of the shoes and notices they are in perfect condition. However, the situation takes a strange turn when the vulture gives them a sniff test to verify one last detail and discovers that it's actually a very special edition, as they smell like cheese. He then tells them it will be a pleasure to do business with him, while Will and his friends watch in amazement. However, the vulture offers him very little for them, so Will knows it's not right, but he accepts it anyway, since he has no other choice. At that moment, they discover that Maine is at the neighborhood field, so he soon goes to see him, as the horse is challenging the locals and beating them all. Furthermore, he keeps saying that there's no worthy opponent, and even easily defeats Grizz, so the locals, who are staunch Tornado supporters, keep booing him. At that moment, Will, fed up with the situation, challenges Maine, but Maine takes it as a joke, letting him know that a goat is no match for anyone, much less a professional player like himself. So, to get him to agree, Will tells him he'll bet everything he has on him, which which makes his friends think he's gone crazy, since that money was meant to cover the rent. Seeing that everyone is watching him, Maine has no choice but to accept. The first one to score 3 baskets wins. Maine, confident, tells him to start, but what he didn't expect was for Will to hit him with a ball, and then score a great basket, so the crowd starts to get excited. Then, Will pulls off some moves and throws Maine off balance, sending him sprawling. Will calmly scores the second point. The crowd erupts with excitement, as someone from the neighborhood is finally putting the popular Maine in his place. However, seeing that the situation is getting out of hand, Maine takes off his chains, and says that now he'll play for real, like in a real game. He quickly blocks Will with his size, and, after a few moves, scores the 3 points, winning the game. This shows that, although our beloved GOAT is good at playing, he still lacks experience and savvy in a real game. Then Maine extends his hand. Will thinks he recognizes him as a player, but in reality, he just wants to collect his bet, money he uses to treat the locals and gain more fans. Meanwhile, Hannah and Daryl try to cheer Will up. They tell him that, at least, he was the one who rivaled Maine the most and who made everyone pull out their cameras to record them. That night, Will tries to sneak up to the garage, knowing he hasn't paid the rent, but to his surprise, he discovers it's already been rented to someone else, and his belongings have been left outside. Disheartened, he simply gathers them up and leaves. Before leaving, one of the rodent children apologizes for what his father did, but assures him that he's confident he'll be a big player at Rollerball someday. He also tells him he has a surprise for him, a hamburger donut. The problem is, he doesn't know how to throw it, and it ends up on the floor. Even so, Will keeps it, since it's all he has for dinner. He then goes to his friend Daryl's house, who lets him stay while he sorts things out. There he discovers that Hannah made an edited video of his fight with Maine, showing how she beat him in the first 2 points. Will has to stay there, in a messy place full of cockroaches, and where the train practically passes over the house, so his luck seems to be going from bad to worse. The next day, on his way to work, he notices that many people recognize him on the street and remind him of when he faced Maine, and although he lost, he is now the pride of the neighborhood. Upon arriving at the restaurant, he discovers a large car parked outside with a license plate that reads La Patrona. He asks who left the vehicle so badly parked, but soon notices everyone acting suspiciously. It turns out that Flo, the owner of the Tornadoes, was waiting for him. She tells him she just wanted to talk to the guy who scored 2 epic points against Maine, since he went viral thanks to the videos Hannah posted. She also told him she didn't just come to congratulate him, but to let him know there's an opening on the Tornadoes team, and she wants him to fill it, as the team is going through a rough patch, and she believes he's the key to getting them out of this slump. Will can barely process the information. Then Flo, to prove she's serious, pulls a contract out of her briefcase and tells him he just has to sign it to become a tornado. Will asks if Jet agrees, and Flo replies that, in a strange way, it was her idea. Excited, Will ends up signing. Everyone congratulates him, including his friends, who arrive saying the video got a lot of likes and was shared everywhere. Meanwhile, Jet gets up and starts her day as usual, used to the news coverage. Suddenly, she learns that the Tornadoes have a new member. Excited, she waits for the announcement, imagining it will be a huge gorilla for defense or an agile crocodile, but she discovers it's a goat. Upon learning this, he quickly jumps into his big sports car and speeds to the Tornadoes' offices, where he demands answers from Flo, since a goat can't be on the team. However, Flo informs him that he's already signed a contract and is right there beside him. Jet complains that she needed a big reinforcement, not a little guy. She even approaches him in true feline fashion, as if she's going to devour him, but Flo calms her down in her own way, since she knows very well how to handle Jet, and tells her to go to the conference to officially introduce Will. Jet has no choice but to respect Flo's decision, while Will tells her how much he prepared and how excited he is to share the court with her. However, Jet replies that she doesn't really consider him her partner, and soon briefly introduces him to the crowd. It doesn't take long before the questions directed at Will become uncomfortable. He's questioned about whether this is all just a smokescreen to cover up so many lost games, or if he isn't afraid that, on the court, the other players will see him as easy prey. Then, Jet takes over the press conference and remarks that Will isn't used to all of this yet, but that he'll be a great team member. He even mentions that, back in the locker room, Will told him he easily took down Maine, whom he even nicknamed My Little Pony. All this while Maine listens to the broadcast as they comb his precious mane. Back with Will, he meets Coach Dennis, who subtly implies that they're just there for show, since Jet runs the team. Dennis then takes Will to the locker room. Will is excited to see the uniforms, and Dennis tells him to get ready for the next game. Meanwhile, at the stadium, the seats are already full and everyone is waiting for the teams to enter. The Iramaco's camera covers the downtime, focusing on the people in the crowd. At the same time, Will arrives with the rest of the team and meets Olivia, the quick and fast one, Lenny, the expert at height, Archie, the team's defender, Father Luchin, who takes care of his 2 daughters, and Moto, a very daring player and at the same time, the strangest of all, since no one can predict predict what he will do. They can't believe Will is going to be their next partner, but they follow Floss's directions and soon they're on the court. Will is thrilled to be stepping onto a professional stage for the first time. However, he remains on the bench as a substitute, while Dennis assigns him to read the Tornadoes plays. The game ends in another loss for the team, and Will doesn't play, but Flo assures the press that he will soon make his debut. The same thing happens in the next game. He's left on the bench again. Watching the opposing team, he tries to offer some advice, but Jet doesn't even listen and tells him to sit down again. Will tries to substitute for someone every time, but no one gives him the spot. Later, Jet decides to practice, and Will joins her to train and show her he can play well. They begin with a series of challenges Jet sets for him. Will overcomes each one, gradually impressing her. In the end, even Jet can't make the basket, but Will is convinced he can. Just as he's about to prove it, someone interrupts them, and he ends up missing comically. Days pass, and the Tornadoes have to travel to another city for another game. Will discovers they'll be going on a private plane, and he's incredibly excited. He tries to bond with the team, but it doesn't seem to go well with any of them, least of all Jet, who doesn't take him seriously, and applauds him sarcastically for overcoming his challenges. At that moment, they discover that Maine wrote a song for Will, where she repeatedly emphasizes that she'll never be on his level, since she's not good enough. She makes all of this very clear in a great rap. A while passes and they arrive in the city where they were invited. Will is very excited about the luxurious hotel where they will be staying, as he has never seen anything like it, and he really enjoys the moment with a few little dances. Suddenly he receives a call from his friends, who, upon learning everything, tell him they hope he hasn't changed, so they ask him for a roar to prove that he still remembers his neighborhood. So Will does one, but it's not enough to convince them, so he has to step it up. They soon realize he's still the same old Will, so there's nothing to worry about. Will then tells them he's amazed by all the luxuries they've offered him, mentioning that they even have a TV in the bathroom to pass the time and watch highlights from his favorite channel. While showing them how he can switch to any video with the remote, he discovers it's not for the TV, but for another device, and ends up getting into trouble for it. At that moment, Jet arrives, clearly unhappy with all the noise, so Will hangs up, and she asks him to let the others rest. Will, very seriously, requests playing time. Jet agrees, though only sarcastically, as the next day, during the game, she benches him again. However, to make matters worse, Jet commits a foul during the game. When she's booked, she flies into a rage and tells the referee to shove his whistle up his pocket, so he decides to send her off the field for the rest of the match. Because of this, the Tornadoes believe they'll have far fewer opportunities without their best player, but the upside is that Will can now play to cover for Jet. Fans are very excited, especially those who are already familiar with Will. Will then easily adapts to the plays he had studied. Lenny, seeing that he is the only one open, passes him the ball. Will begins to feel nervous, but soon reacts and manages to score, which unleashes the excitement of the fans. The coach gives him instructions to lead the next plays. Although his teammates don't quite know the strategies, Will manages to organize them, and soon they begin to score more and more points, thus winning the game. Meanwhile, Will tells the other team's captain, who kept telling him he wasn't up to par, that it seems he finally shed crocodile tears over the result. The team is very excited, and they can't stop celebrating, something they haven't done in a long time. However, Jet doesn't seem very happy and decides to leave. That night, the Tornadoes return to Hive. During the trip, the members invite Will to play with them to get to know each other better, since he has earned their respect. Will suggests they invite Jet too, but they refuse, saying she doesn't like to have fun and always ruins it with her airs of superiority. They also talk about the game she missed and how, oddly enough, they won. What they don't realize is that Jet was listening, so she turns up her music to drown them out. Then, the kids explain to Will that the team is actually a mess, since Jet has always been the Daryl Tana, and also the one who fills the coaching role, so Dennis is practically just there for show. Incidentally, at that moment he gets a prank from the little Hughes. They also acknowledge that they aren't the best players. Lenny, for example, had a troubled past in the neighborhood and almost lost everything. Olivia, on the other hand, struggles with social media and is overly concerned with what others think. Archie can barely handle his mischievous daughters, and it's best not to even mention Moto, since his behavior is a complete mystery. The good thing is, though, that he's very skilled at cards and beats them easily. At that moment, Flo contacts them and reveals that in the promo they will record this time, not only will Jet appear, but everyone will be there, something that the captain does not take well at all. The next day, while filming the promo, the Tornadoes showcase their impressive skills one by one. At the end, Jet is supposed to say he'll pass the leadership to Will as the representative of the new generation, but he can't even get it right. That's why they have to repeat the take over and over, and the team team's morale starts to plummet because of Jet's attitude, who ends up ruining the recording by declaring that she's the best and that she'll be the one to lead them to victory. She also implies that a goat won't dethrone her. The situation spirals out of control. No one dares to say anything until Will raises his voice. However, Jet interrupts him and asks who he is on the team. Will replies that he was the one who covered for her during the game when she committed the foul that could have ruined everything. In response, Jet declares that she'd better retire, since it seems they don't need her for that promotion, and adds that without her, they would never fill the stadiums. Because of this, Will immediately catches up with her and apologizes for what happened earlier, but Jet, now calmer, opens up to him and confesses that she's really upset because she hasn't won the Claw Trophy. At the same time, the supposed fans in downtown Hyde Park are demanding that she win it already. Jet tells him she feels like no one trusts her, and that sometimes she thinks she should give up. Will, understanding how she feels, decides to get her out of there, and in the midst of their little adventure, they even outsmart the train guard. Jet manages to feel better with that brief respite. Then Jet tells him that, although she won many matches in the past, in one of the most important ones, she almost won the Claw Trophy, but she froze. From that moment on, she believes she lost the fans' trust. That's why Will takes her to the restaurant where he used to work and shows her that she does have real fans there, people who have always supported her through thick and thin. In this way, Jet meets genuine followers who appreciate her a lot, even if some of them have a rather peculiar way of showing affection. Jet is very happy and starts telling stories about some of the game. She also gives her approval of the food, and jokingly asks for a like and for everyone to subscribe. Jet then discovers that the restaurant has a pair of collectible sneakers she's always wanted. The manager decides to give them to her on the condition that she wins the Claw Trophy. Later, Jet and Will get to know each other better. Will tells him that his mother was a Tornadoes fan, but that one day, she left for St. Peter. However, he assures him that she always believed he would become a great roarball player, something no one else did. He also tells her that the people at the restaurant and his friends from the neighborhood have been there for him since he was left alone. Then Jet says goodbye and tells him that he's surrounded by good people. Will replies that she is too, she just can't see it yet. That night, Jet sees Maine on a live stream, where she's constantly criticizing Will and the Tornadoes. Feeling more confident, she decides to join the stream and quickly defends Will, assuring everyone that the Tornadoes will win the championship. But when Maine starts attacking her too, Jet responds by making fun of her huge teeth. Maine tells him that he has 2 claw trophies and she has none. However, Jet replies that this time will be different, highlighting how much each team member has improved, and speaking well of them for the first time. He even states that he'd rather have no trophies than have that abandoned doll hair, and warns her to stop talking about them until they face off in the championship. The next day, the Tornadoes can't believe Jet's change. She tells them she's finally realized she needs to value the people around her. Her first big change is giving Dennis back his coaching job. He tells her he already was, but Jet assures him she means business this time. Thanks to this, Dennis finally takes charge of the meeting and transforms, as he had always been waiting for this moment. He lets them know that he will train them in such a way that they will overwhelm any team on the court. From then on, in the following matches, Dennis intervenes with key advice. He tells Archie that, just as he protects his daughters, he must also protect his teammates on the field, and thanks to that, they begin to gain an advantage. On the other hand, she convinces Lenny that he really is the best in the air, turning him into a ball-catching machine. Meanwhile, she makes Olivia see that she's one of the best, but that her problem is her cell phone. She gets her to get rid of it and transforms her into a true speedster on the field, showing what she's made of. As for Jet, although she's the best player, Dennis points out that she has a major flaw. She never passes the ball to others. They work on it, and little by little she begins to improve. Meanwhile, our protagonist is told that he must work on his biggest disadvantage, overcoming his opponent's height. He begins practicing with Grizz and his block, who has now become a fan of his. And finally, there's Moto, who wants to learn his lesson mentally. Dennis manages to help him, as all he needs is better self-control. Finally, Dennis assures them that they will soon be an unstoppable team. As the following games progressed, things improved for the Tornado. They kept winning, Will managed to pay off his debt, and he continued scoring points for the team. Meanwhile, news reports commented that the team was doing so well that Maine should put away his cheap plastic spurs. Thanks to this great moment, the semi-final match arrives. The Tornadoes are very excited, but there's bad news. Flo informs Jet that she has sold the team. After the tournament, they will no longer belong to Hawthorne City, but to Swamp City. Furthermore, none of them will continue with the team, since they only bought the name and don't want a veteran who hasn't yet won the Claw Trophy. Flo asks her to tell the team to vacate their lockers after they lose that night, because she's sure they'll lose to the Shivers. Will overhears everything and tells Jet they should inform them immediately so they can all deal with the situation together. But Jet refuses, believing it will distract them during the game. Then they introduce the Goosebumps team, one of the best in the league. The game begins, and this time time, Jet, feeling the pressure, reverts to her old ways and starts demanding too much of her teammates, who begin to lose hope of winning. After losing several points, they call a timeout to regroup. Will tells Jet they need to talk to the team to figure out what to do, but when she refuses, Will ends up confessing in front of everyone, and his teammates start to worry. Because of this, Jet stops listening to them, and understands that they must win at all costs, since it will be their last chance to reach the final and win the trophy. Therefore, she changes her attitude and reverts to her old school Jet ways, stepping over everyone, even her own teammate. She starts racking up points. Soon, though it affects her own team, she manages to tie the score. With only seconds left on the clock, they pass the ball to Will, who is about to score the winning point. However, Jet steals it at the last moment to score herself and secure the victory. Thus, although they win the game, Will loses all his feelings for Jet. Jet then goes to the locker room expecting a standing ovation, but instead finds a team exhausted from what she put them through. At that moment, they realize that even though they made it to the finals, it will be their last game together, so they decide to call it quits. Will even tells her that she's no longer his favorite player, so the Tornado team disband. Each member, in their own way, ends up isolated, and with no desire to play again. Will returns to his neighborhood court, where he's told he should be practicing to defeat the Magma. However, Will doesn't believe Jet wants them on her team. At that moment, he discovers she's come to him to apologize. She confesses that the pressure of losing the team caused her to lose control. Will understands she's truly sorry and accepts her apology. Then they go to the others, and Jet apologizes to them as well. He lets them know that the Tornadoes are the ones who should win that trophy against the Magma, and soon the whole team is reunited. Thanks to this, the long-awaited final arrives. Maine and Magma are more than ready to defeat them. On the first play, Maine puts Will in his place and scores, letting him know that this is how a professional plays. However, Will has the support of his team, and soon rejoins the game, starting to score points. But at that moment, they notice Maine going straight for him again. Jet steps in to save him, though he ends up injuring his foot. The doctor advises him not to play the rest of the game. The team then believes they have no chance without Jet, but Will tries to lift their spirits, and encourages the others to win for her. They return to the field and the crowd rejoices to see that Jet is out of danger. In the following plays, the Tornadoes evened the score. In one particularly impressive play, Olivia regained her confidence and gave Maine a taste of her own medicine, leaving him seeing stars. As a result, tensions between the teams rise. Maine continues to go after Will, but what he didn't expect was that Archie would defend him so well that everyone starts applauding him, except the referee, who ends up ejecting him for the rest of the game. So, with no other option, Jet decides to participate and help in any way she can. Soon, the team executes a new play devised by Dennis. Everything goes according to plan, and when Jet has the ball, the opposing team blocks it, so she passes it to Will, who, with only seconds left, becomes their hope for winning the game. Amid the tension, Maine tells him that he'll have to jump over him first, but Will replies that it won't be necessary, as he throws the ball from a distance, lifting it high over Maine. Everyone watches as the ball slowly approaches the basket until it finally goes in, winning the championship. Thanks to this, the entire stadium congratulates them, while Maine even realizes he's lost his hair. Will and Jet congratulate each other, overjoyed. At that moment, Flo arrives to celebrate with them, but Audie and Ari manage to keep her away. Then, they are presented with this season's Claw Trophy, which they take to Ivy City. The residents are downcast because they believe the Tornadoes will move to another city, but Jet lifts their spirits by assuring them that, no matter what happens, the Claw Trophy will stay in the city. Furthermore, Jet reveals that he will relinquish leadership to Will, who becomes the new captain. He expresses his gratitude to everyone who believed in him, especially his mother, wherever she may be. However, at that moment, Moto speaks up. Everyone thinks he's going to come out with one of his usual antics, but he actually reveals that he's the current owner of the Tornadoes. He explains that he met with the new owner and bet everything on the team. In the end, he won. Therefore, the Tornadoes will not be leaving the city of Hydropolis. Thanks to this, the whole city celebrate, but this time they do it in the style of the goat that changed the game.